forward.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our training for educators about pre-employment transition services. We're happy that you're with us in this training today. Just to give you an overview of the agenda, we're going to start with some introductory information. We'll give an overview of transition services. We'll review pre-employment transition services, or Pre-ETS. We'll talk about how Pre-ETS are part of a work-based learning program, and then we will share some resources.
Hello, everyone. I am Lindsay Horowitz, and I work with the Minnesota Department of Education as the Post-Secondary Transition Specialist.
Hello, I'm Erin Larson. I work at the Minnesota Department of Education as the Work-Based Learning Specialist.
And I'm Sheila Koenig. I work at State Services for the Blind as the Transition Coordinator.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Klein, and I work with Vocational Rehabilitation Services as the Transition and Pre-Employment Transition Specialist.
So first, just to go into a little bit of our special education and transition. So that secondary transition planning, as most of us know, or many of us know, is that process of preparing our students for life after high school and ensuring that we're including planning for post-secondary education, job training, employment, and independent living. And in doing that, incorporating and collaborating with all of other agencies, so ensuring that we're including that employment, that self-advocacy, future planning for that independent living, and incorporating that with age-appropriate transition assessments, then ensuring that we have measurable post-secondary goals and identifying those transition services and needs, aligning them with those courses of study, and aligning with that annual IEP. All of this being coordinated with multiple collaborative agencies together.
And because some of that transition planning includes preparing students for employment and workplace training, I wanted to provide a short overview as well about how career and technical education and work-based learning fit into that bigger picture of a student's experience. As you think about students being college and career ready and really having the opportunity to explore careers that they like to do and have a chance to kind of prepare for them, that's where career and technical education fits in, where they have the chance to develop some very specific technical skills related to their career of interest, and then go out into the workplace through a work-based learning experience and apply those skills in a real-world setting. So it kind of blends it all together and helps those students develop those skills.
Vocational Rehabilitation Services, or VRS, and State Services for the Blind, or SSB, are sister agencies at the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, or DEED. Both agencies provide employment services to people with disabilities. SSB serves individuals who are blind, deaf-blind, or have low vision, and VRS, on the other hand, serves all other types of disabilities. VRS and SSB are also partners in the Minnesota Career Force System, which used to be called Minnesota Workforce Centers. There are about 50 career force locations in the state, which provide employment-related services to any job seeker who needs help finding work or any employer who needs help with finding workers. Also, it is important to know that VRS and SSB serve both youth as well as adults. Sometimes young people may not utilize our services while they are in high school, but if they need us, they can always access our services later. This slide is a high-level overview of the services that VRS and SSB provide. At the heart of everything we do is career counseling and guidance. We work with each person to help them develop an individualized plan based on their needs. That plan can include job training, such as community or technical college programs, university level education, apprenticeship, etc. It can include help in finding a job, as well as services that help a person to keep a job. Pre-employment transition services encompass much of what we provide to high school students. And then there can be so much more. And again, it's all based on what a person needs. For many reasons, COVID, our Minnesota Olmstead Plan, the changing federal laws, and much more, collaboration between schools, VRS and SSB, counties, and community providers is more important than ever before. It is crucial for all of these entities to know each other on the local level and to work together to ensure that all students with disabilities get their transition service needs met.
The importance of collaboration is also reinforced within 2 items that came out from the U.S. Department of Education this past summer. Minnesota Department of Education shared these 2 resources with the Minnesota Special Ed directors, which are also linked on our website. In June of 2020, the Minnesota Departments of Education and Employment and Economic Development recommitted to our partnership through an updated memorandum of understanding, which is also linked here. The items listed on this slide are also outlined within the MOU. What are transition services? So moving into what does transition mean to all of you? Many of us are in transition. Some of us are new to transition in our roles. Just think in your head, what does transition mean to you? And here's our official definition of transition. Moving from one state to another, one stage to another. That movement, that development or evolution from one form, stage, or style to another. And here we have what's meant by transition for youth with disabilities. Thinking of when adolescents are moving into adulthood and they're planning for that post-secondary education, their careers, what are their health needs, financial benefits, independent living, and so much more. And it's really that continuation of service across being both a child and adult service systems. And lastly, that transition from youth to adulthood, so critical for every young person. Also, I want to note that at the federal level, special education and rehabilitation services are sister agencies at the U.S. Department of Education within the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, also referred to as OSERS. It's no coincidence that both of our federal laws, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, define transition exactly the same, and also require that education and vocational rehabilitation address transition in collaboration with one another. Moving into the IDEA definition of transition, multi-part definition. So really that coordinated set of activities for a child with a disability that include designing those goal and data-based oriented results that are focusing on improving that academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to really facilitate that movement and transition from school to post-school activities, and including that post-secondary education, the vocational education, competitive integrated employment, continuing on to adult and adult education and services, and that independent living or community participation. And making sure that we're really focusing on those individual needs, taking into account their strengths, their preferences and interests, and including, while doing that, making sure to include that the instruction, the related services, the community experiences, and that development of employment or other post-school adult living objectives, and where appropriate, those daily living skills and functional vocational skills, making sure that we're including all of those while focusing in on those child's strengths, preferences, skills, and interests. And then here's our transition policy and practice. Really, that transition age is our ages 9 through 12, ages 14 through 21, and ensuring that special transition age activities, that's that focus. And you're bringing that, incorporating that collaboratively together.
VRS and SSB operate under the same definition of transition, and it's the same definition as IDEA. So all you have to do is go back to slide 15 under the IDEA definition, and then you'll see the transition definition for our program as well. And pre-ETS are a part of transition services, which that's what we really want to emphasize going forward in this presentation. So more to come on that. So what are pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS? So we've mentioned WIOA a few times already, and so we'll just take a little step back. WIOA was signed into law in July of 2014. It creates a new vision for how America prepares an educated and skilled workforce that expands opportunity for all workers and employers. WIOA amended the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is the federal vocational rehabilitation law. And it includes two primary changes that impact youth with disabilities. So the first are the new set of services that were new in 2014, which are pre-ETS. And the second, which we're not going to focus so much on today, but I will say a few words about, are limitations on the use of sub-minimum wage. So this part of the law restricts youth under the age of 25 from entering into work where they earn less than a minimum wage without having access to other services that lead to competitive integrated employment services first. So they need to access VRS first before going into sub-minimum wage. If you want more information about that, there's a link on this slide. And you can always reach out to any of us with any questions too. Bottom line is that WIOA changes are all about increasing the opportunities and supports for young people with disabilities to be fully prepared for post-secondary education and employment after they graduate from high school. VRS and SSB must have pre-ETS available to all students with disabilities across the state. So we must have them available. And they're provided in collaboration with secondary schools. Any student with a disability between the ages of 14 through 21 can receive pre-ETS.
There are 5 required pre-ETS, which again are really meant to help students develop those skills they're going to need for employment as early as age 14. So the 5 required include job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, post-secondary enrollment options, so whether students are considering college or other educational training, 18 through 21 transition program, workplace readiness training, and instruction in self-advocacy. One of the key things that we really want you to be able to see is that pre-ETS are part of transition services. So just a couple of examples of those. The schools already are providing pre-ETS services as part of transition services in a student's IEP. They're also provided to all students as a part of their personalized learning plans. And then VRS and SSB provide pre-ETS to students who are eligible for our program. And we also provide them to students who are potentially eligible for our program. So there might be students who don't want to apply, but they can still access these 5 pre-ETS services. As was mentioned earlier, the schools are the primary provider. VRS and SSB fill in the gaps. It really is about collaborating to get the students what they need so that they're set for life after high school. And collaboration is the way to go about filling in those gaps.
This visual is meant to also help you understand where pre-ETS fit in the full landscape of services that are available to students with disabilities. So of course, all students have access to general education as that first line of services that they receive. However, students with disabilities that need more support, of course, can have access to special education, as well as the VR services that both VRS and SSB provide. And then within both special education and VR are the transition services, which we just talked about. And then within transition services are those 5 pre-employment transition services. So as school staff, how do you know when to refer students to VRS or SSB? First, know that WIOA and the Pre-ETS mandate within WIOA is really about expanding who we can serve. So we're able to provide Pre-ETS to any student with a disability. We just need verification that the student has a disability. And again, we can start serving students as early as age 14, which is really exciting. So you would want to consider referring a student if they have unmet Pre-ETS needs that the school isn't able to fulfill. You would also want to consider referring early so that they have plenty of time to be ready for what happens after graduation. Lastly, by referring a student, you then have a partner in seeing that the students you serve get all that they need. VRS has 2 staff assigned to every high school in the state, a counselor and a pre-ETS representative. Pre-ETS representatives start with the younger students, as well as students that don't have needs beyond just those 5 required pre-ETS services. Counselors, on the other hand, work with older students, and they provide pre-ETS as well as other more comprehensive services during and after high school to those with more significant support needs. Some school staff have reported confusion about who they should refer students to, but keep in mind, there is no wrong door. The counselor and the pre-ETS representative work together as a team to ensure that students get the VRS services that they need.
And at State Services for the Blind, we have a team approach to providing pre-ETS services. We have the specific counselor designated by region. We have a statewide transition coordinator and a work opportunities navigator, as well as assistive technologists. So all of these people work together. As a starting point, you can go ahead and contact me, and I will connect you to the best person to get things started for your student. Additionally, VRS and SSB have community partners that help deliver pre-ETS services. So we have community rehabilitation providers, we have independent living councils, and we have Career Force who all work together to help students develop these skills.
So next, I'd like to provide a little bit additional information about school work-based learning programs and how they align to pre-employment transition services that students receive. There are a wide variety of different types of work-based learning programs school districts might offer to students. As you can see listed on the chart on the screen, they might include a youth apprenticeship, which is a really in-depth work experience that students participate in, or they might be a career-specific work-based learning internship where students are really focused in on a particular career, or it might be an opportunity for students to have the chance to try out different careers and see what fits for them. So most commonly, when we're talking about alignment to pre-ETS, please note that all of these numbers really work the same, regardless if a student has a disability or not. They're just the different numbers that school districts would code them to within their systems to allow them to access some different funding sources. But in practice, students are all working to master really the same same type of performance indicators. So the one that's most commonly probably for school districts to access is around ACTE SPED funding. And you'll see that listed on the left-hand column under the 750 program. Each of these different programs has a similar set of requirements, including a career seminar course. This course ensures that students have had appropriate safety training and that they've learned about the various employee rights that they have available to them. Additionally, they may or may not have some opportunities to participate in some career-related instruction within a particular career field so that they can practice those skills out in the job site. And then finally, in terms of the number of hours, there isn't a set of rules at the state level that districts must follow, but most commonly we see that school work-based learning programs require about 90 to 120 hours in a job site for students to earn credit. However, that can vary depending on each school district. Ultimately, the main key components, though, as you're thinking about those different types of work-based learning programs, is really that they have an appropriately licensed teacher. By law, they must have a work-based learning endorsement on their secondary teaching license if students will be out in the field working for 40 hours or more. Again, that career seminar course is also required as a part of that work-based learning program. And then probably most importantly is that the programs must implement training agreements and training plans. The training agreements really lay out the expectations for students, families, employers, and school districts and make sure that everybody is on the same page before the program begins. And also those training plans are individualized to each student and identify the skills that students should master throughout the course of their experience. So it makes sure that it's a rigorous set of coursework for those students as they're out on the job site. One resource that's available and new to help you map out those different requirements within your work-based learning programs is the Work-Based Learning Framework. This is a guide that includes performance indicators for 3 different courses, including 2 career seminar courses and a work experience course. They were developed in partnership with vocational rehabilitation services and work-based learning coordinators across the state. You can find the full document on our website in the link below, but just to share a little bit of what's included in those. You'll see it'll have some general information and a course description for the course, along with the details of the recommended amount of time students should participate. And then it also has a series of performance indicators that map out the skills students should be able to master by the time they reach the end of that course. You'll also note that there's a series of classroom applications listed for each performance indicator. These are really to help differentiate the instruction that happens and again really highlight that all students should be doing the same type of work and skills within a work-based learning program. It just the different supports available to them could vary by student. So that classroom application section is a nice way to kind of think through the different ways that students could be supported in learning those similar performance indicators.
All right. So what is also new, and it's pretty exciting to me, is that we have a Pre-ETS framework now. And so as Erin mentioned, when the work-based learning framework was created, vocational rehabilitation staff were a part of that team. And so during the time when that was created, we also created simultaneously this framework. And so it defines the 5 required pre-employment transition services. And so that, Sheila mentioned earlier, and it outlines performance measures, just like the work-based learning framework does. And then it aligns with the work-based learning framework. So I'm going to go back to Erin's last slide. If you look on the right, you'll see under performance measures, you'll see the different bullets. For instance, the first bullet there says identify personal interests, aptitudes, abilities, strengths, talents, and areas for growth. And then next to it, you're going to see a code. It says JEC1, and it's linked. So JEC is Job Exploration Counseling. And if you click on that, it will bring you down to which component of the Pre-ETS framework that piece of the work-based learning framework that it aligns to. And so what's really cool is that almost every component that's in the work-based learning framework aligns to a Pre-ETS service. So what that tells me is that when students are engaged in school work-based learning programs, they're getting many of their pre-employment transition services needs met. And this just really helps us see how that all kind of comes together. And what's also really cool is that it's going to also align with the transition framework. And so you might be wondering what that is. So I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay, who's going to say more.
Great. So coming soon, we will have our transition framework, and that one is also similar to the work-based learning framework and the Pre-ETS framework in collaboration with our local school districts, and then specifically including compliance and assistance from Minnesota Department of Education, work-based learning, and then VRS as well. And with that framework, we will also ensure that it links back to the other frameworks as well. So aligning all of that work for all of our populations that we work with. And this will be on our website come fall. So next we'd like to walk through some resources and where you can receive more information. Here are some of our MDE resources.
Yeah, and so the first couple of resources are related to career and technical education and work-based learning. The work-based learning website includes the link to the work-based learning framework that we mentioned before, as well as a variety of other resources. There are FAQs related to work-based learning for special education teachers. There's a reference manual that goes through the very specifics for each program. There are professional development opportunities listed. So lots of different items that you can check out. The CTE program approval website includes a database where you can check to see if your school district has an approved CTE program for work-based learning. And if it doesn't, it'll walk you through the steps so that you can have that approval in place.
Next, we would like to go to, and you will be able to click on these live, the post-secondary resource guide. And the post-secondary resource guide is a guide that it allows you to really see what each person's role is in that post-secondary planning. Where and when do I go in that planning? And it's a collaborative effort of that planning among VRS, county, school, family, and ensuring that everybody knows their role. Then the next resource is that employment resource guide. And this one is also another collaborative resource guide among the previous I just mentioned of VRS, education, county, family, school, and any other community partnerships that you're involved with, but really guiding you through that process of from that 9th grade on up for that competitive integrated employment. And then lastly, wanting to draw our attention to the special education transition webpage. And this is where also we will have our newly linked transition framework. But this is another place where you can find all of these resources and more.
Okay, so VRS has a web page that's dedicated to providing information to educators on what you need to know about VRS and Pre-ETS. So that first link that says educator page on VRS website will take you there, and you can go through and you'll find all the rest that are linked here. So first of all, you can find VRS staff that are assigned to your school. We have a short 4-minute video that explains to schools the benefits of partnering with VRS. A new MDE VRS partnership guide, which also walks you through some of the things we've talked about in today's presentation. And we also have the Minnesota Toolkit, which has classroom activities and curriculum for you to use. And there's a lot more. And again, all of these things we're just going to continue linking onto our websites.
You can find a multitude of resources on SSB's website as well. Bridge is kind of like the underlying philosophy to all of our programs. If you think of how students get from being a young adult to being someone who is in college and employed, that they cross the bridge from that early adulthood into adulthood. So that's the foundation. You can learn more about the skills and ideas linked to that. You'll also find some videos by students, some videos for parents and teachers as well. We have a bi-monthly newsletter called The Spectacle that has all kinds of resources and upcoming activities and opportunities for students and families. And Blind Abilities is a podcast where they interview a lot of adults with a vision loss, give information about assistive technology, and all kinds of other fun stuff. So we really hope that you reach out with any questions. We'd love to talk with you more about any of the things we shared with you today. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you.